think I'm gonna do the YouTube one. Two people watching. Welcome in. We're live at Studio B. We kind of planned this probably 3 days ago. Myself, Roderick Self here with Kevin Emmons. Kevin, it's been a crazy 24 hours.
Yeah, it's been a lot to take in. We've just been trying to take it in minute by minute, second by second, but it definitely has been a crazy 24 hours in the local high school basketball scene.
And that's to say the least. So, just starting out, how was your day yesterday? I know, you went out and checked out some games up at Trenton. So how was that for you yesterday?
It was a good experience in terms of basketball. I went up to Cure Insurance Arena up in Trenton. They change the name every year, so I got a little thrown off there. Had to think of the name there for a minute. Went and seen the Trenton Tornadoes play Trenton High. They're now 25-1, looking like a favorite in Group 4 to maybe bring home a state championship. Watched them play Notre Dame in the Mercer County Tournament final. It was Trenton ended up winning 64-49. It was their first county tournament title since 2008, and it was a great day of basketball. And then obviously, like we said, a crazy 24 hours. Tragic event there. A gentleman lost his life, unfortunately, due to an incident that happened there, an altercation that turned violent. From my perspective, what was really crazy was, like I was saying to you earlier before we hopped on here, I mean, when I left the game, I mean, the incident, the reports, coming in from, different news outlets were saying the incident happened around 8:30 and everything like that. Around that time, that's right around the time the game was concluding. So obviously I'm down on the floor, interviewing players and coaches after the game and stuff like that. And on the way out, I mean, there was no signs of anything traumatic happening. I mean,
Right.
everything was calm, everything was fine. Didn't seem like there was anything going on. You walked outside, people were just, conversing, going to their cars and stuff like that. Just your typical, post game scene. And then I get home and, people are sending me links to Action News and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, I didn't know any of this happened. So it's definitely been crazy, reading the reports and stuff like that and taking it in. And I know you had a similar experience yesterday too.
Oh man, yeah, it was, it's tough to watch. Two city teams. Everybody knows everybody. The game was actually a good game leading up, but we'll kind of get into that a little bit as we go through each group because there are big ramifications from that incident that happened, and we'll get into it a little bit. I don't want to kind of keep bringing it up. You know what I mean? We at some point we will have to, move past that situation. But at the moment, we'll talk about it when we get to obviously Group 2 and Group 3. So, to get the show started off, we're going to start with Group 1. It's a big tournament right now. Group 1 is going to start off. I believe some of those games may start tomorrow. So what are we looking at as far as Group 1 with that bracket, how that goes?
Well, Group One will begin Monday. Right now, the top seed is Wildwood, which gives them a major advantage because if you talk to any coach in South Jersey, they'll tell you Wildwood is a tough place to play. I was at a game a couple weeks ago, Woodbury and Lindenwold, discussing ramifications of the Group 1 playoffs, being that Woodbury is also a high seed in Group 1, which we'll get to. And talking to a former coach who used to coach in that group, he said, man, Wildwood is some home cooking. That's a long bus ride, and that's a tough place to play. So they'll be the number 1 seed in that group, taking on Kip Cooper Norcross Academy, which for a 16 seed, that's a team that beat Cherry Hill East earlier this season in Group 4. So that's our first game. The winner of that will play the winner of the 8-9 game. Audubon will be the 8 seed. Palmyra will be the 9 seed. Next game we'll go to is 5th seeded Salem will be hosting 12th seeded Clayton. Next we move to is 4th seeded Burlington City hosting Riverside, who is the 13 seed. And those two games we just listed, Salem and Clayton, Burlington City and Riverside, these are two teams that play in the same conference, same division, so they're familiar with each other. They've seen each other a couple times this year. They've seen each other a couple times past couple years. So two opponents familiar with each other in those respective games. In the 6 versus 11 matchup, we have Pittman hosting New Egypt. We have 3rd seeded Paulsboro hosting 14 seeded Woodstown, which obviously those teams are familiar with seeing each other on the football field.
Right.
They'll be seeing each other on the hardwood in the playoffs on Monday. And 7 seeded Glassboro will be hosting 10 seeded Pennsgrove, another matchup where two teams have seen each other twice this year. And then Woodbury, who we previously mentioned, will be hosting Pennsville in the first round in the 2 versus 15 game.
So based out of that bracket, I'm gonna just ask what are some of the key matchups that we're going to be looking at? What sticks out to you as one game that possibly could be an upset, or it could be one that you might want to just keep your eye on out of that bracket?
Well, one of them we just mentioned, talking about the element of teams that have played each other multiple times this year. Salem being the 5 seed hosting Clayton, who is the 12 seed. They split their season series. Salem won the most recent matchup 72-63 a couple weeks ago. Clayton won 80-76 the first time around back in January. So it's the rubber match. I mean, obviously it's the one that matters the most, and whoever wins this is going to advance, and it's for all the marbles. So that's definitely a matchup that's worth checking out. It's been a close game both times. Clayton is a team, they run that tornado offense. They like to score a lot of points.
Right.
And Salem is a team who, they were there last year. They were in the Group 1 final for South Jersey last year. They got a lot of guys back, particularly the coach's son, Anthony Farmer Jr. Obviously, their coach, Anthony Farmer, was a standout at St. Augustine. Just recently inducted into the South Jersey Hall of Fame, played basketball at Rutgers. And a lot of those guys, I actually haven't seen Salem yet this year, but I seen them last year, and they have a lot of guys back.
Right.
Ja'Kai Coates, who was a quarterback in football, Amari Smith, who was a football standout, who's a terrific rebounder for them. Those guys, having played in football and playing in those big games that we all know with Salem
Right.
played in the past couple of years, that mentality kind of carries over to basketball season. They know what it's like being in a win or go home situation. So that's definitely a matchup to keep your eye on, because these are two teams that are familiar with each other. They've beat each other, and they know it's go hard or go home.
I mean, if you pinpoint that's a 5 versus 12. Normally, you look at the seeding, and you would think that the 5 seed will have the edge. But like you said, they both played each other. This will be the third time. And Salem does have the advantage of playing home, so
Absolutely.
it gets a little interesting when you go down Salem and you get into that neck of the woods. But very interesting game. I'm looking at the Woodbury. Is it Pennsville?
Yes, they host Pennsville in the first round.
I mean, that one is a kind of statement game, I think, for Woodbury. Just looking at how they like to score, get up and down the court. That's one that I'm kind of looking at. I want to see how they get out and get rolling. A lot of their guys play football as well, so they're coming back off of that, the big win for the state championship football. Be interesting to see if they can squeak it out. So I'm looking at them to possibly be my favorite coming out of South Jersey as the representative. What about you? Who's one of the favorites that you're looking at?
Well, I mean, you make a good point with Woodbury. I mean, I went and seen them play Lindenwold a couple weeks ago, and the reason I went out and seen them was because playoffs were approaching. I was like, I'm trying to see as many teams as possible with the playoffs coming up. And you mentioning that football element, we kind of just touched on it with Salem. Same thing applies for Woodbury. They've been right there playing Salem in football each year, and talking to those guys after the game, because they have a lot of football players on that team.
Yes, they do.
They said the mentality carries over. They said grit is the thing that led us to a state championship in football. They're like, we want to win another championship.
Right.
So grit and toughness is what we're relying on right now at this time of year. And they're definitely, obviously, one of the favorites in that group. Jabron Solomon has been unreal. I mean, 50 points in a win against Audubon a couple weeks ago.
1,000-point score.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. A lot of you're going to see now, teams are going to try to game plan against that. When I watched them at Lindenwold, they went boxing one on him. He still got his. I think he finished with 14 that day. They did a good job. Lindenwold did a good job hanging in that game. They played him tough, and I don't want to say they took him out of the game, but they limited him over the first 3 quarters. But the important thing was other guys stepped up that day when they needed him to. Julian Shorts, another football player, he stepped up that day. And he said, when he knows when, defenses try to key in on Jabron Solomon, if that ball comes to him on the wing, it's his time to shine. He's got to get the job done.
Yeah, so as we move forward, man, it's just one thing I'm taking away. Could you imagine if we have another Salem Woodbury matchup for a chance to go to the States?
That would be unreal.
I'm just sitting there thinking about it.
It's a possibility, too, with Woodbury being the 2 seed and Salem being the 5 seed. It's absolutely a possibility. And these are two teams, like we said, they have the mentality, the grit. They know how to play in the postseason, regardless of whether it's on the gridiron or on the hardwood. But since we're kind of talking about, the possibility of teams facing one another and stuff like that, we don't want to, count out the other teams in this bracket.
Not at all. It's just that would be a pretty cool storyline. I think every media outlet would kind of eat that up a little bit. That's why I just threw it out there.
No, absolutely.
You can't sleep on Paulsboro either. Coming out of that group.
That's another team with experience playing in the postseason. But you mentioning Salem, because in my mind, I start thinking about what the matchups would be to get there. And the first thing I thought of when you brought up that that scenario there was thinking about Salem is going, if they win, they're most likely going to have to go to Burlington City in the second round. Burlington City's another team. They were in the Group 1 state championship last year.
Can't sleep on City.
They're another team that has experience playing this time of year. Their coach, Brian Warwick, was actually drafted into the NBA by the Washington Bullets back in the 1980s. And that was a team last year that, they were in Central Jersey last year, so they made the move back to South Jersey Group 1 this year. And they were a team last year. They didn't necessarily, enter the playoffs lighting it up, but I actually seen them in their state semifinal against the South Jersey champion, Gloucester City, and they were on fire that day. And they're the type of team, they're a team that's kind of been on my mind the past couple of weeks looking at these brackets, because mentioning that thing I said earlier about Wildwood having to go down there, a little home cooking, a long bus ride, a tough place to play. Burlington City's the type of team that feeds off that. Like they're rambunctious. They'll go in there. If they go in there and they hit a couple shots early on, they're going to feed off that energy and they're going to be ready to dish it right back. So that's another team you definitely want to watch out in that bracket.
Most definitely. So we ready to move on to Group 2? let's
Sounds good.
take a look at Group 2, and I mean we could break down the brackets as they were coming into this moment. And what are we looking at out of Group 2?
Well, so obviously right now we have the top seed is Haddonfield, another team that truly has home court advantage, being that that's a tough place to play. They'll be hosting West Deptford, their Colonial Conference foe. They've had some battles the past couple years, and obviously different circumstances this year. But we'll see. You never know when you know your opponent so well. You game plan. You know what each other does. It makes for a good game. So we'll see. We'll see what comes out of that. The 8-9 matchup is Medford Tech, another team that's kind of flown under the radar this year. They've had their ups and downs. They've had some peaks and valleys, but a very talented team that I think this is an opportunity for them to maybe turn some heads. They'll be hosting Lower Cape May, another solid team who's had a solid year this year. Fifth seeded Overbrook will be welcoming Pleasantville to town, a 12 seed, and another game, we'll get into that, where anything could happen. Pleasantville just knocked off Atlantic City a couple weeks ago,
Right.
and they're another gritty team that feeds off that rambunctious energy.
Definitely.
And Overbrook, obviously a talented team too, playing right now as we speak in the Tri-County Conference Tournament Final against Timber Creek. An experienced group, first-year coach Donnie Lang there doing a great job. Winner of that game, we'll see the winner of 4th-seeded Sterling and 13th-seeded Camden Academy Charter. The next matchup will be 6th-seeded Haddon Heights versus 11th-seeded Cedar Creek. Haddon Heights, another team we'll get into. Been playing a lot better recently. The 3-seed Cinnaminson, who was undefeated against South Jersey competition up until the other day when Rancocas Valley beat them in the Burlington County tournament. They will be the 3-seed hosting Haddon Township. 7th-seeded Middle Township will be hosting 10th-seeded Gloucester City, a team we just mentioned, who was
Yes,
the South Jersey
yeah.
Group 1 champion
Group
last
one.
year. They're up to Group 2 this year, which is important to note. And then the last matchup in that group was Camden and Lindenwold in 2 versus 15 game. And anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, it's. I mean, that situation. A statement came out from the NJSIAA. I'll try to get to it if I can, but pretty much just to sum it up, they said that they stand with the decision that Camden made, and that is a decision that they pretty much was going to make. So, little tough. I know the Camden East Side. We'll speak about them in Group 3, but for Camden, they were poised for another run. And I know for the city, for the team and the players, everybody just involved, this is just, a little bit of a disappointment. I don't want to keep banging the drum. I'm sure the kids are going through it. And because when you're in a moment, heated moment, you're not really thinking fully. So, that's a game that pretty much is going to be forfeited. Lindenwold will get the win and they'll advance because Camden decided to pull out. So that rule came down before NJSIAA made their ruling, which would have probably realigned the tournament seating. But because Camden District went on and forfeited, it goes ahead and gives Lindenwold that win. It's a tough position to be put in for everybody involved. Nobody wants to see this. You always want the best teams to be in a playoff tournament. So, tough one, man.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tough
And
one.
I didn't want to harp on it, but just wanted to kind of provide some clarification
Yeah.
for some people who may not be familiar with the situation
Yeah.
and know all the details. But as you said, just a very unfortunate situation all around for all parties involved.
I mean, very unfortunate. We're not going to play videos of everything that's kind of floating around. I'm not here to judge either team. I'm not here to judge either coaching staff or anybody. That was a decision that had to be made by NJSIAA, and they ultimately made the decision along with the Camden Board of Education. So, but looking at that bracket now that Camden's out of it, what should we be all looking out for?
I mean, it's wide open now. I mean, like we were saying before the show, I mean, right now it looks as though Haddonfield's the next in line. They would be the favorite, being the 1 seed, and they've been playing some great basketball right now. Camden Eastside actually defeated them in the Camden County tournament the other day, and that was their first loss in their last 18 games.
Oh, wow.
They
Okay.
won 17 in a row going into that game. Obviously, if you're familiar with Haddonfield basketball, it's a slow pace. They play real fundamental. They get everyone involved, a well-coached team, and they execute. and that's what makes it hard for teams to beat them because they execute. And as we said, it's a tough place to play, so that home field advantage or home court advantage is going to help them. But another interesting matchup is if they Haddonfield advances in the first round, the 8-9 winner, Medford Tech and Lower Cape May, those are two teams that, like I said early on, are gritty. They've kind of flown under the radar because they've had their peaks and valleys, but two teams absolutely capable of beating Haddonfield. If it came down to it, they could definitely hang with them, I should say. I'm not saying so-and-so is going to beat so-and-so, but they have what it takes to hang with them.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. Looking at that bracket that we looked at earlier, there's no real definitive person or team that you could say this team is that team right now. I mean, Haddonfield would be the favorite. Obviously, they have the 1 seed, so they have that home court advantage like you spoke to. But I'm looking at teams in that, Sterling, Overbrook, just to think that other teams are just going to walk through this is kind of tough. And then,
Absolutely.
You're looking at, Gloucester City. They had a playoff run, championship run type last year. So they're a team that has been there. So this is probably the most competitive group now with Camden exiting that we have in South Jersey.
Absolutely. It's a wide open field. And mentioning Gloucester City, they're another one who's got to take a long bus ride down the Garden State Parkway to Middle Township. And Middle Township is legit.
That's another one.
They're legit.
Great
the
coach.
McNeil brothers, they got a great coach in Lamar Greer, and they're a battle-tested team. If you look at their schedule, they're another team that's been kind of surging lately. They lost to St. Augustine in the Cape Atlantic League tournament the other day, but other than that, I think they had won 6 or 7 in a row, something like that. Don't quote me on that; it's not exact numbers, but they've been playing really well and they're battle-tested. Because when I seen them at the beginning of the year against the East Side. Lamar Greer said to me, he said, I want these guys to be ready for the postseason. So they're going to be ready to go.
And they are a battle-tested team, and they've been playing some really good competition. I mean, you would think that, that East Side, and like you said, they played the prep. Like, they're poised for a playoff run. They are a sleeper. Now, out of this, who is the team that you spoke to some flying under the radar, but if you had to put a little wager that they will kind of shake the bracket up, who would it be out of these teams?
Well, I mean,
that's a tough one.
It's not really a bracket breaker, being that they're the 3 seed, but Cinnaminson, another team, like I said, they haven't lost to a South Jersey opponent until they lost to Rancocas Valley the other day in the Brown County tournament. And I seen them play a week or two against Pemberton because I was interested to see them play because I seen they were kind of just breezing through their schedule. And watching them play, they're a very young team, but you would think they were all seniors the way they play with composure down the stretch in pressure moments. Like that game against Pemberton, it was tied up early in the fourth quarter about 5-6 minutes ago. And when you're watching a game and it's a close game, but you have a feel for who's going to pull it out. It was one of those games where there was no telling who was going to pull it out. Like it really felt like a literal coin flip at that point. And they were just so poised and so composed on the stretch. I think that's a team you got to watch out for because if they win their first round matchup, they're hosting Haddon Heights, another team who's been surging right now, another team who could qualify as kind of that bracket buster surprise team. I mean, whoever wins that is going to be, most likely hosting a Middle Township in the semifinals. And
it's a tough one.
Next thing you know, one of them teams is going to find themselves in the final.
Yeah, that's for sure. So we had a question that came in. It says, how does Haddonfield have the top seed over Camden? Doesn't matter now because of obviously Camden not being in the tournament, but they were just curious. So the answer to that is the games that you play that are in the state of New Jersey, you get power points for that. You get points, and you get we'll just keep it at points. You get points. Being as though Camden did a lot of traveling, they didn't accumulate as many points as a Haddonfield did. So ultimately, Haddonfield would get the 1 seed, and Camden would get the 2 seed. Correct? Or did I explain it good enough for them?
No, that's
a little bit
that's
more?
a good point. That's a good point. It's a number system. I myself don't know the logistics of all of it, but I know you get certain points for beating an opponent based on what group they are. If it's a team with a lot of wins, you'll hear a coach say, going into a big game, oh, this is a big game for us for power points. They got a lot of wins. We can get a lot of residual points from this. So to answer that question, my guess is because Haddonfield obviously played an all New Jersey schedule, and as we said, they won 17 in a row. So you're accumulating power points in that,
racking them up.
Yep. And another thing to note too is the system changed. It used to be your first 16 games was what it was, and then there was a cutoff.
Right.
Now the cutoff was just literally a couple
days ago, yeah.
to where teams have played, 23, 24 games, and you're taking the top 16 games out of that 23, 24 game, pool.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's accumulating points. Teams are getting points from their, more powerful, more signature wins compared to other games and stuff like that. So,
all right, I think we're doing pretty good with time. We figured it would be close to an hour. We're close to a half hour right now. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Group 3. I mean, that's another bracket that experienced a little bit of shakeup, and I'll go ahead and speak to it before you get to it. With the exit of Camden Eastside exiting out of the bracket as the 2 seed, I believe they were the 2 seed as well. Unfortunate for the Tigers. They were getting right where they needed to be. Going into the playoffs, having their guards kind of coming into their own, figuring out how to play, new team. It's just tough that they had to exit. Again, I'm not trying to judge either team, circumstances. I don't want to get into that on this particular program because we're just here to pretty much highlight the seeding. So what are we looking at for Group 3? I'll just leave it there, and we can move on and start talking about the bracket. So what do we have for Group 3?
So in our first matchup, we have top seeded Mainland, a team who went on a run last year, won the Cape Atlantic League tournament last year as an 8 seed. They were the lowest seed in the tournament. That was like history set there. Came back this year with a lot of guys back from that team. They've been on a roll. They took the 1 seed. They'll be playing 16 seed at Winslow, which that's not an opponent you could look over either, being the fact that, when you play in the Olympic Conference, there's no nights off.
Right.
You're battle tested. You're playing a good team every single night. So that's one to keep an eye on there. Obviously, Mainland will be the favorite, but it's definitely something to monitor there. The winner of that game will be seeing the winner of Delsea and Triton. Delsea being the 8 seed, they will be hosting Triton, the 9 seed. Triton, another team, if you look at their schedule, they've been playing really well recently, I should say, grinding out a lot of wins. So definitely those 8-9 games are always close. It's always, expected to be a coin flip kind of game. So we'll see how that turns out. Another good matchup here, we got 5th seeded Hamilton, who's also been playing really well, hosting 12th seed at Cherry Hill West, a team who went on a run last year as a double-digit seed and made the Group 3 semifinals last year. And I seen them play Morristown a couple weeks ago. They kind of got blown out there. It wasn't really the outcome they were looking for, but just watching the makeup of their team, and that's a team that's really well coached with Aaron Burt there. That's a team built to, upset somebody. Like, they have the pieces to, pull off a win or two here in the playoffs and kind of gain some momentum and maybe go on a run. So definitely a matchup to monitor there. Moving on, we have 4th seed at Morristown, who will be hosting 13th seeded Lacey out of the Shore Conference. Morristown, another team that during the middle of the season, they got hot there for a minute. They beat Camden Catholic. They beat Paul VI. Kind of fizzled out a little bit there, but been playing really well. They actually just won the Burlington County tournament a little bit earlier today, beating Lenape. So another team entering the postseason, on the right foot with some momentum. Our next game will actually be the first game to kick off the playoffs in South Jersey. 6th seed at Pemberton versus 11th seed at Absegami. That game will be taking place tomorrow, 11 a.m. I actually talked to the athletic director, Joe McColgan at Pemberton, a good friend of mine, and he said that they wanted to move that game up. Both teams agreed to move that game up because I know Pemberton hadn't played since Monday, so they were, willing to not sit out a whole week, but play the game, on Saturday, shorter week. Still give yourself time to prepare, but not have your guys sitting around for a week, not engaging in any kind of live action or anything like that. And obviously, Absegami was on board, so they, agreed to play that game. That game will be taking place tomorrow. The winner of that matchup will be seeing the winner of 3rd seed at West Hampton Tech and 14th seed at Barnegat out of the Shore Conference. West Hampton Tech, another team that's just been clicking on all cylinders at the right time of year. Our next matchup is 7th seed at Timber Creek, who is currently playing in the Tri-County Conference Final.
Let me give you an update on that. This was a couple minutes ago. They were down to 5 minutes left in that game. But right now, that game, it's a timeout by Overbrook. Timber Creek leads 51-42 with 28 seconds left in regulation. That comes in from Chris Baker. You can follow him on Twitter. But that's where we are right now.
Yep, and that's a team that'll be hosting 10 seeded Ocean City, another gritty team, another battle-tested team playing in the Cape Atlantic League every night. So that's definitely a matchup to keep your eye on. And kind of just flowing back to Timber Creek there, you mentioned them being ahead right now, and don't want to get too far off topic, but one thing I really love about how a lot of these leagues are starting to incorporate these county tournaments is it allows these teams to play in postseason environments, postseason situations leading up to the playoffs. And a team like Timber Creek, I mean, minutes away from potentially winning their county tournament, that's the kind of stuff that fires you up and gives you that motivation that propels you going into the playoffs.
That's
and
for sure.
Then the last matchup there was scheduled to be Camden Eastside and Clearview, which we talked about earlier, and similar situation to Camden and Lindenwold, where the NJSIAA issued a statement and said that certain team will advance, so Clearview will advance to the next round, and they'll be facing the winner of Timber Creek and Ocean City.
All right. So what matchups should we be looking for? We kind of go down that road. It's one that's sticking out to me. I'm not sure if it's the exact same one that you have, but I'm gonna say that Morristown at Hamilton. That's the Group 3.
Yeah, that'll be the second round. That'll be the second round if both teams advance.
Okay.
Morristown's hosting Lacey, Hamilton's hosting Cherry Hill West in the first
That's the
round.
possible one, but yeah, Hamilton's pretty good.
Yeah, Hamilton is really good.
I like them.
If you're familiar with football, Kenny Smith, who was
he's
a
getting
problem on the
buckets.
football field, he's a problem on the basketball court too.
He is getting buckets right now. We watch him. We've been to a couple of games that he played in, covered him. I really like that matchup, potential matchup of Morristown, Hammy. That's the one that kind of sticks out to me in my head when you were going down listening. But for the first round, which one sticks out for you?
Well, it's a tough one. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of good matchups there. I mean, Timber Creek and Ocean City, I think, stands out because that's 7-10 game. These are two teams that are playing really well. Battle tested. Each team played a tough schedule. And at this point, I mean, either team's looking at, a good shot at, making it to the sectional semifinals in a wide open bracket. So that's really something to look at in the first round. And I kind of want to spin back to your point about kind of looking ahead. And you mentioned maybe Morristown and Hamilton. We could even go a step further and talk about the sectional semifinals could potentially be Mainland and Morristown. That is something I'm really looking forward to.
I'm not going to. I forgot Mainland. When I think of Mainland, I'm thinking Group 4 for some reason. But they are really good. I've been watching those guys. I mean, they've been posting highlight reel type plays from the beginning of the season until now. Alley-oops. I mean, they're running and gunning up and down the court. Nah, we can't overlook them.
Absolutely. And Cohen Cook, another one who, kind of made a name this year on the football field. He was outstanding for them on the basketball court last year. He's really just been dominating this year. Tim Travagaline's, pardon me if I pronounced that wrong.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say that one either.
But I had to mention him though, because he's a hooper. I mean, when he gets going from behind the 3-point line, he's really a catalyst to that offense. I mean, they got guys that can handle the ball, they defend well, they play real physical, they're well coached, they get rebounds. They got a lot of balance, and they're a team where they could put their starting 5 out there, and they got guys that come off the bench and contribute. Don't get me wrong. But that starting 5, they can go all game if you wanted them to. I mean, they play with a lot of heart, a lot of hustle, and they understand each other. They're in sync. And, having that top seed is an advantage because Linwood is another place, that's a far bus ride for a team like Morristown.
Yeah.
It's a far bus ride for Winslow going down there in the first round. So having that home court advantage really helps out. And that's definitely a matchup to keep your eye on down the road. And then another one, too, like I said, Pemberton plays tomorrow. They host Absegami. Absegami is another team you can't look past. Playing in the Cape Atlantic League. I think they're up to 16 or 17 wins right now. But if we're still going, looking at the whole next round kind of thing, if we're kind of anticipating, Pemberton would most likely see West Hampton Tech in the second round.
Ooh,
those two just played.
That's a backdoor rivalry right there.
I just seen them play in the county tournament last Saturday.
Yes.
Gritty game. West Hampton Tech pulled it out. Pemberton beat them earlier in the regular season, and one of those games, like I said, these county tournament environments, it was a Saturday morning game, and it was loud in there. It was physical. It was gritty, intense over the last 5 minutes of the game, and it had that playoff-like atmosphere. So if we get a part 3 of that, that's definitely one where you might want to go check that game out.
So you have me thinking right now. I might have to take that back when I'm looking at Group 2 as being the most competitive. I'm still leaning Group 2, but this is pretty tough. I mean, that Timber Creek, possibly Timber Creek Ocean City,
That's
I believe
first
it
round.
is.
Yep, first round game there.
You know, Ocean City has to travel up to Timber Creek. Do they have enough to pull off the upset? I don't know, but that's a game I'm definitely going to have my eye on as well. So
Absolutely.
that's probably the one I'm looking at out of that group. But it is lining up to be some really good games in the second round. So
Absolutely. And Timber Creek's a team that's got experience playing in the postseason.
Yeah.
I mean, they were set to go to the Group 3 state championship that year where COVID hit and everything
Yeah,
got
they were
canceled.
pretty good. Yeah.
Felt bad for them that year because they were right there. They were excited, and they obviously have a lot of experience and great coaching there, and they're used to playing this time of year. So definitely a team to keep your eye on in that bracket. And like you said, it's wide open.
It's wide open. I mean, when we're talking about Group 2 and Group 3, I know that Mainland is the 1 seed in Group 3, and I know Haddonfield was the 1 seed in Group 2. But man, it was poised for a run of both Camden teams to once again have an opportunity to make their way up and both win state championships again this year. It's just like I said before, I just hate that, you know, some of the better teams are not in the tournament. If they get knocked out in the first round or second round, hey, it is what it is. You didn't have your best. But for them to you know, not even be able to get to that point, it kind of stings a little bit. Still stinging. My phone been ringing all day, man. It's kind of one of them things. But we're moving on. Let's go to Group 4, and we'll get to that point where we.
Group 4, you want to talk about wide open. You want to talk about wide open.
Group 4 is wide open, man. What are we looking at? I know it's some schools in there, but what are we looking at?
All right, well, before we jump into it, I mean, let's be very clear here. A lot of Group 4 teams, a lot of teams that occupy South Jersey Group 4 are in that Olympic conference. So a lot of these teams have seen each other this year. So that's really what adds to the whole parity element of this bracket. But looking at the bracket, you have Lenape, the defending South Jersey Group 4 champions, a team where going into the season, most people didn't know what to expect. You know, some of us, you know, expect them to be competitive. We knew what they had coming back, what they were bringing in, and expected them to be in a similar situation. Some people weren't really sure what to feel. They're the top seed again. They'll be hosting Gloucester Tech in the first round. 8-9 game, another division game, 2 teams that have seen each other twice this year. Williamstown will be hosting Washington Township, 2 Tri-County Conference teams, real familiar with each other. Route 42 battle right there.
Yeah, it's not too far of a drive.
Not at all. And I mean, those teams got history in football, and here they are, you know, creating some history in basketball. The next matchup, we got Central Regional out of the Shore Conference located in Bayville, right near Toms River, which isn't too far, like from where I lived. It's like I said, it's Shore Conference, considered the Shore, Jersey Shore, whatever. But obviously playing in a South Jersey bracket because it's not too far from Medford may only be 35, 40 minutes from there. So if anyone's not really familiar with them, they'll be hosting Rancocas Valley, the Red Devils of Mount Holly in the first round in the 5 versus 12 game. A matchup we'll definitely be keying in on here in a minute. Moving on, we have 4th seeded Eastern, a team that's been playing really well lately, taking on 13th seeded Atlantic City. Another team that's kind of been finding their footing and figuring out late in the season here. Next, we have 6th-seeded Cherokee playing 11th-seeded Atlantic Tech. 2 other teams who've seen each other earlier in the season. We'll get back to that after we introduce these matchups. 3rd-seeded Egg Harbor Township will be hosting 14th-seeded Millville, 2 Cape Atlantic teams. Egg Harbor Township will actually be playing in the Cape Atlantic League tournament final tomorrow against St. Augustine, so that's a game to monitor and look out for. Definitely could be a good game for them going into the playoffs to gain some momentum. They've been playing really well lately. In the 7 versus 10 matchup, we have Cherry Hill East, a finalist in South Jersey Group 4 last year, hosting Southern Regional, another team out of the Shore Conference right there in Manahawk, and another team that, like I said, is categorized as Jersey Shore, but they're South Jersey.
Yeah.
That's South Jersey down there by LBI, Long Beach Island.
Yep.
And then in the last matchup, we have another Shore Conference team who we've kind of grown familiar with from the Gridiron, Toms River North, hosting 15-seeded Shawnee, another team who young, but you can't count them out.
You talking about Shawnee?
Yes, sir.
I don't want to count them out either, but I'm looking at that bracket. That's a tough matchup for them.
Absolutely.
Tom's River has some really good players who have been there when they were young. So now they're still considered young. Some of them are juniors, and they're still have another year left to play. That's a tough matchup for Shawnee. Having to travel down to that part of the shore.
Absolutely.
To play Tom's River. And that's one that I'm kind of looking at. I'm not putting it past Shawnee coming out of there with an upset, but that's just a tough matchup for him. So what's one of the matchups that you find to be an interesting matchup out of this bracket?
Well, there's a couple I want to key in on here. Like I said, fifth seeded Central Regional, who I actually seen play a couple weeks ago. Went and checked them out in the Shore Conference tournament. They played Brick Memorial. A well-coached team. Mike Clemente actually earned his 100th career win that night. Great coach, great guy. He's real familiar with South Jersey basketball scene. He's friends. I see him interacting with a lot of South Jersey coaches and stuff like that. They host a great Coaches versus Cancer showcase down there, and they're a good team. They're experienced. They got guys that are bouncy around the rim. They got some tall guys who like to shoot. But this is a good opportunity for Rancocas Valley to go in there and get the upset. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying so and so is being so and so, but they're built to go in there and win that game. I was actually I'm familiar with some guys who work there and coach there, and they told me when the pairings came out, they're like, we really like that matchup. They told me we're getting ready to watch film on them today. And RV is a really athletic team. They got guys also like Central who are bouncy around the rim. Yeah. They can grab rebounds. They like to get out and go. So that's definitely one to watch because RV, our South Jersey team represented here, they're the 12 seed. And like we said earlier when we were talking about Salem and Clayton, you typically look at 5 and 12 on the bracket and think, well, 5's got a pretty significant advantage.
Yes.
This is a game where the margin isn't so wide. It's really close, and anyone could win this game. And another one I wanted to key in on was Cherokee, the 6th seed, hosting Atlantic Tech, the 11th seed. Atlantic Tech's been a surprise team this year, and they actually beat Cherokee earlier in the season. The 11th seed already beat the 6th seed, but it's a whole new different season.
Let me ask you this. I mean, I maybe I've been missing something, but this is my first year really hearing of Atlantic Tech being in the playoff realm. I don't know if it's a new school. What happened? Why are we just hearing about them?
Well, it's an experienced group. They actually won 15. They went 15 and 11 last year, I believe. Byron Nelson is the coach there. He's doing a great job. If you're familiar with Wayne Nelson, who coached at Winslow, who's at Atlantic City now, it's his brother. I actually went down and checked them out when those two played each other. It was the first battle between those brothers. Unreal game in terms of suspense and thrilling action. That might have been the best game I've been to this year, and I've been to a lot of games, so that's it's kind of saying something. It was a great finish. Atlantic Tech won that game, and they're an experienced group. They won 15 games last year. They brought everyone back. They're well coached. They bought in, and like I said, they beat Cherokee earlier this year. They have a couple wins on their resume where it's like, this team is legitimate. It's not like they're just breezing through an easy part of their schedule. They're playing legitimate competition. And they're winning games. But like I said, I don't want to not discounting Cherokee here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Eric Cassie's my guy, and that's not someone I'm betting against in February, March. That team's going to be ready to play. It's a new, like we said, it's a new season. It's a fresh slate. That's a team that comes to play in the playoffs. They're prepared. They up the intensity. They know what to expect, and that's a team you got to actually watch out for in this bracket.
And just speaking of Cherokee, they always have a really good atmosphere as far as playoff goes.
Absolutely.
I've been there a couple of times for some playoff matchups for the on the boys' side and the girls' side, and it's always a good atmosphere. Atlantic Tech definitely has to go in and be laser focused for this game, and because the environment can feel like they're getting on top of you and up in that gym. It's a nice gym, but it's nice size, but it's still kind of tight. It's, one of those that if you're not focused, they'll get to you as soon as you walk into that gym.
Absolutely, and that's why, this matchup I'm really anticipating because, like I said, we're talking about Atlantic Tech going into Cherokee. Atlantic Tech beat Cherokee, but, obviously, we talked about the PowerPoints thing. There's a lot more that goes into it. It's not like, you beat so-and-so, so you automatically get to host them in the playoffs. It's nothing like that. But, looking at – they might get fired up from that, looking at that like, we got to go on the road to these guys.
Exactly.
That might fire them up. So that's definitely a matchup to watch there in the first round. And like we said about Williamstown and Washington Township, two teams that split the regular season meeting, two teams that also, play in big gyms. They thrive off the environment. So This one's for all the marbles. It's for the bragging rights and a chance to move on and most likely see Lenape, the defending champion, in the second round. Another opportunity to play with some motivation and try to go out there and pull an upset off.
Right. I've seen Lenape play. They played Eastside this year. They play really well. They play really good basketball. They get up and down the court. They have some perimeter shooting. So that's pretty good. I'm not sure if they're the favorite because some of the teams I haven't seen. I've seen the Millvilles. I've seen Cherry Hill East. I've seen Shawnee, Cherokee, some of those teams. But some of these other teams, RV, I never did get a chance to get out to see them this year. So I'm not too sure or too familiar with the full bracket. You obviously seen way more basketball than I did because while I was covering, one team under contract, you were kind of out still on those Thursdays and Tuesdays and Saturdays seeing some of these teams, and you have a pretty good knowledge of the teams you're looking at.
Well, I think an interesting thing in this bracket too is a lot of the teams at the top, not even at the top, just thoroughly 1 through 16. There's a lot of differing styles.
Okay.
So Egg Harbor Township will take for an example, the team that's playing really well right now. They're the 3 seed. They like to get up the floor. They're very talented. They got a lot of players. They like to play games that are in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, I've seen them play too. They played Eastside down in Atlantic City, I believe it was.
Yes,
yeah,
Battle at the Bay.
I did see them.
Yep. And they're a team that likes to get up and go. They like to play a high octane offense. They like to, as I said, play in the 60s and 70s. Whereas a team like Cherokee, who they could potentially see in the second round, Cherokee actually beat them earlier this year, and it was like a 37-34 kind of game. So you have those Olympic teams who like to slow down the pace,
Slow it down.
play their half-court game. They got 100 plays they like to run, and there's some teams that can adapt to that, and there's some teams who simply can't. They don't like, I've talked to some coaches, I won't, say names or get specifics, but I've talked to coaches that have said, like, hey, we struggle with these teams that slow down the pace because our guys get impatient. It gets us out of our rhythm. He said, they run through 100 things. They take a minute or two off the clock. They make a 3. He said, next thing you know, our guys are going down trying to respond. He said, we go down, we're erratic, we're out of control. We miss a shot.
Yep.
They come back down again, eat another 1 or 2 minutes, hit another 3. He said, next thing you know, we're looking at a 6.9-point swing, and 5 minutes have gone away because we haven't been able to adjust to their pace, to their rhythm. So that's what's really interesting in this bracket. It's all a matter of who comes in and executes their style of play, runs their stuff correctly, limits the mistakes, and that's really what it's going to come down to.
So here's the $1 million question. Group 4, who do you have as your favorite to come out of this? It's not saying that they're going to win. It's not saying that this is his favorite team. So don't kill Kevin, all right? Don't kill me for saying that I like certain teams. All right, who do you got?
All right, well, I'm going to be completely honest. A couple days ago, like when the brackets were official, I went through and I eyed everything out. I, looked at what all the potential matchups could be. And right now, I would have to say, I think the favorite is Lenape, not just because they're the 1 seed. I mean, that contributes to it, the fact that you're going to have to come into their house and play. But this is a team, as I said, going into the year, a lot of people didn't know what to expect. Derek Simpson graduates. He's off to Rutgers.
Yeah.
Tavon Gaither graduates. He's off to Stockton. Aiden Anderson's playing at Lincoln now. And that was a majority of their offense. People have forgot that they brought back Ty Dorsett, who's having an all-South Jersey caliber season this year. Lenape hit a rough part in the road a couple weeks ago, but that's when Dorsett was hurt. It showed how much he really meant to that team. Tiki Clark, arguably the best defender in South Jersey. Yeah. And they got guys.
That's our guy, man.
Oh, yeah. Yep, he's part of the team.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's our guy.
Yeah, that's right. He definitely helped out with some picks before. I forgot about that. Yeah, another player who plays, great lockdown defense. And then another guy who's flown under the radar in South Jersey, Miles Primus, a transfer from Medford Tech for them. Real lanky, can defend, real bouncy around the rim, can shoot, a little bit. And I just think they're a team that knows what it takes to play this time of year. They're playing really well. They were in their their county tournament tonight. And I mean, you look at the matchups. I mean, they're gonna, they win. They potentially host the winner of Williamstown and Washington Township. We could be looking at, if we're, how we were talking about in Group 3, looking at potential semifinal matchups. We might get Lenape and Eastern in the semis for that bracket.
That's a good matchup.
Two teams that have been playing extremely well lately, and 2 teams, as we've said, it's been a common theme, played each other in regular season and split the regular season series. So when I look at a bracket and you ask me like who would I think is the favorite, I look at a team like Lenape and think, well, this is who they're gonna have to go through.
Yeah,
and
matchups.
if they're in a situation where they're playing Eastern and it's two teams that split in the regular season, I don't believe Ty Dorsett was there the last time they played. I might have to lean and give them the edge there. So if they're hosting in a South Jersey Group 4 final, you gotta kind of look at them as the favorite.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and give an update real quick. It's just coming in that they have a final that Timber Creek has won the Tri-County championship, 53-45 over Overbrook.
Sounds like it's a good game.
Any thoughts on that? Sounds like it's a good game.
Yeah, that was definitely a matchup to go out and check out. I mean, obviously, not much has to be said when you're talking about a Tri-County Conference county tournament, but two teams playing extremely well, as we said. Timber Creek, obviously, we touched on them, being experienced this time of year, a well-coached team, and I believe a couple guys on that team might have been on the team. They might have, I think they would have been freshmen at the time. I could be wrong, but some of them guys might have been a part of the program when that team, got to the state championship and said, look, state championship ain't happening this year because of COVID.
Right.
So, some guys could be playing with a chip on their shoulder, just trying to reach that goal that their teammates or their classmates didn't exactly get to reach. Yeah. And Overbrook, a team, when we talk about Group 2, I felt like Overbrook, looking back, I didn't get to really touch on them. That's another team, too, that's playing really well right now. And a team, them and Sterling could see each other in the second round. That might be a game to go check out.
I kind of like Sterling. I've seen them play. They play the scrappy style of basketball, but they're okay. I said scrappy. To me, scrappy is kind of like people look at it as being like you're dissing them, or you don't think that they're as good that they win by their effort. So I'm going to retract the word scrappy. They're a well-coached team.
Absolutely.
And the way that they play is fast and aggressive. They have some really good players. I believe I'm not great with names. I didn't have it written down, but they have a freshman guard, I believe. He's really good.
Bramir Long.
And, their main guy, number 23, forget his name.
24, Caleb Mundell, CJ Mundell.
He is really good. And I'm sorry, people, I don't really talk to the players in their, what's the word I'm using, with their real names. They all have crazy names on Instagram, and then when I ask them their name, they give me nicknames. I forget. Sorry. But, they have, those two guys are really good. And that's not to discredit any other people, but those are the guys that kind of stood out to me when the day that we covered them and we did a live stream on them. Those guys kind of just stood out, and they played Timber Creek that day, and they had an opportunity to beat Timber Creek, and ultimately Timber Creek kind of took over in the fourth quarter. But Sterling, you're definitely right. There are a team that you want to look out for, as well as Overbrook.
Yep, two teams that could see each other in the second round. I kind of want to touch on Sterling, too, because I seen them play a couple weeks ago in the Paul VI Showcase. They played Medford Tech, another team we touched on in Group 2. Medford Tech's actually the 8 seed. Sterling's the 4. Medford Tech rolled past Sterling that day when I seen them. But since we were talking about Sterling, it made me think, obviously it wasn't the outcome they wanted that day, losing. Right. But watching them play, something that was, really unique, and I thought this is something that's going to help them down the stretches. Caleb Mundell that day, offensively, he wasn't really taking a lot of shots. He wasn't getting those opportunities. But in a situation where, you're your team's best player and you go down early, there's a lot of players in that situation where they're kind of forced to just start forcing shots and stuff like that, doing too much.
Jacking up shots. Yep.
In that game, I'll always remember, they went down in the second quarter. They were down 12 or something like that. And he got it back, and he had 8 assists in the second quarter, just getting teammates involved, getting out in the open court. He's an underrated passer. A lot of people see him as a slasher, a scorer for his team, being as his team's leading scorer. A very underrated passer, and they're a team that gets everyone involved. They feed off of energy. Jadis McFadden, another great player for them, another experienced player. And as we said, Justin Behringer does a great job. That's a well-coached team and battle tested. They just played Paul VI the other day. They set themselves up for success this time of year. They want to be battle tested and play teams that prepare them for these moments in February.
Well, we just ran down all 4 of the groups. We're close to our time, 55 minutes. We actually did it. It was the first one. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you're catching the replay, thank you guys for tuning in to our playoff bracket breakdown. Hopefully we can get to do it again. It depends on how everybody plays because from now on, I mean, we tried to cover and do one of these shows. We talked about it early in the year of creating a basketball show so we can come on and, do it once a week. But the way that the schedules are, it's kind of hard to find that right time to actually do a show without missing coverage that we both have to do. So
Absolutely.
next year we will try. I mean, we are going to have to figure something out.
It's coming soon. It's coming soon.
We're going to try. We're going to have to do something. We may have to do something in the summer, AAU, just a little coverage here and there. But most definitely want to thank you guys for tuning in. I want to thank you, Kevin, for coming into the show. Make sure you guys check out d2sportsnetwork.com. Check out some of Kevin's articles. He's going to have some great coverage here going into the playoff season. This is his time of year. All right. If y'all looking at these books, a wealth of knowledge in there. He's been taking excellent notes. And he is our basketball. I don't want to call you guru. GOAT.
You call me whatever. I'm not coming up with the names.
Yeah, so thank you once again. Anything you want to say, parting words?
Just thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Looking forward to catching the playoffs next week. Hope to see some of you guys out there. It's always a pleasure, running into people. It's one of my favorite parts about this job, when you're out in public somewhere and you run into someone and created so many friends doing this sports media stuff. So it's always a pleasure seeing guys and catching up with people, seeing how they're doing and stuff like that. So once again, just thank you guys for tuning in and always showing support, checking out our articles and stuff like that. And we look forward to seeing you in the future.
So make sure you give them your socials while we have them here, your Twitter, and I'm not going to say Instagram because we got to work on Kev with the IG. He's on, but we got to go ahead and give him your socials, Kev.
So we're real heavy on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at official K Emmons, KEMMONS, and at SJ Sports Zone. Really, dominant Twitter presence, along with D2 Sports Network. We do a great job, continually posting content, sharing story links. We do rankings each week for boys and girls basketball, also football in the fall, baseball in the spring. So we try to be real involved with the community and communicate with people and interact and give you guys, something fun to talk about. Mm-hmm. And Instagram we're working on, been a little more consistent. It's just tough.
I see you.
When you're a writer, it's hard to push out, stories on Instagram.
Right.
So I've been trying to incorporate a way where, here's a visual, come check out, our story and our bio and stuff like that. So if you want to come check us out on South Jersey Sports Zone on Instagram, it's literally South Jersey Sports Zone, all lowercase. And you'll see we have a lot of collaborations with D2 Sports Network. And I think we really have something special brewing here.
Oh, man, this is great. This has been great here today. Just getting here talking about basketball. We've been out, watching a lot of basketball this year. And we finally got a chance to come in and talk about it. We planned this prior to all of the events that happened, so I don't want anybody to think we're just, rushing out here to try to do it. We just wanted to make sure we had coverage and shed light on some of the teams that were playing really well this season. And there's a lot of teams out there who have an opportunity to win the state championship now. For each group, there are some favorites, but it's no real true favorite for each and every group. So it should line up for some really good basketball, and hope you guys enjoy it. That's my parting words, and we're out of here, okay? Thanks for tuning in.